What is the goriest thing you have seen in real life? When I was returning from my village, I was waiting at the train station. A train stopped at the station and an elderly man of about 65 or 70 years old was in a hurry and jumped to the other side of the track. The man was crushed by another train whose speed was about 100 miles an hour. He died instantly. His body was scattered on the track. I recently had to clean out the car my sister killed herself in. Though it wasn't the worst gore I'd seen, it impacted me the most. Middle of summer, and it was several days after her body was found. The cup holders between the front seats were full of blood, and the smell was overwhelming. I used to collect bones, and cleaning them didn't seem nearly as bad. I've always had a strong stomach, and have not been bothered by death. It's different though when it's a family member. If it were up to me, I'd sell the car. My parents, however, want to keep it. Even though it's clean now, I can hardly go near it without feeling a little sick. 9 years ago yesterday, my father-in-law took his own life. He was a bad alcoholic and had done alcohol-related legal issues, mostly DUIs. He was put on bond while awaiting sentencing for felony DUI. I was 22 at the time, and I got a call from my wife at work that her dad was dead. Rushed to his house about 4 blocks away, where his brother was. He had found him, not my wife, thank God. I went inside with him, and my God, the amount of blood. He had slit his wrists in the downstairs bathroom, walked to the kitchen, then up the stairs into his bedroom, and laid there with his hands in a trash bucket. The EMTs showed up maybe 30 seconds after I did, but it felt like minutes, staring at my father-in-law, pale and sunken. My wife showed up a few minutes later, and I had to hold her back from going into the house. Her screams might have been the worst part of it all. Unfortunately, we didn't make it, split up about 15 months later. Not surprisingly, we were both still a bit fucked up from it. I saw a body decaying near a COVID center. That was the worst thing I ever saw. It smelled bad and it looked horrible. And surprisingly, a kid was standing next to it. The boy was standing there, expressionless. I gave him some biscuits and asked him what he was doing there. He said something in a foreign language, which translates to, "I'm looking at my father." I took him to the nearest police station. They asked him a few things, but the boy was traumatized. His father was the only family member that died due to COVID. The father went to the hospital and died in the ICU. The hospital just threw out his body along with that kid. I'm a paramedic, so I'm no stranger to gore, but the worst thing I saw was a guy who got smoked by a semi in the middle of the night because he stopped to change his tire on the interstate without his hazards on. We didn't even know that he basically turned into mush until we stepped out of the truck and our boots were covered in his bits and pieces. The engine was later called to the scene to hose what was left of him off the road. One place I worked, the coffee room was on the 3rd floor, UK reckoning. I was looking out the window and locked eyes with the cleaner on his way past. He had jumped from the top of the building, 33 plus floors, and was headfirst aimed at the concrete. He looked so calm, almost happy. R.I.P. Jose, hope you found the peace you needed. Flew rescue helicopter. Got a call in heavy fog to a serious traffic collision, quite literally, about 200 meters from our base. We decided to move the helicopter as close as we could, right on the airport boundary in sight of ground. At least we could provide a working life support vehicle. Traffic continued to slam into the rear cars. I have an enduring image of a paramedic called Neil scramble over the wreck of a car and wrench open the door, and a young man's head rolled out like a football. He just reached over the body and hauled out a small child. The next vehicle to hit was a fuel tanker. I watched everyone in front of me burn to death. I could still hear the screams of the drivers and passengers of the cars as they burnt to death. I still can't process the head and the screams. I've given up trying. My father is a bus driver. One time he was stopped at some train tracks when the guy ran out in front of the train. He said it was obviously suicide, as the guy stopped on the tracks with his arms out. Said the guy turned into a red mist, and his severed head hit the windshield. When he and the passengers got off the bus to give their statements to the police, The guy's arm was lying right next to the track. The company offered my dad 2 weeks off, but he went straight back to work. He grew up in a really rough part of Jersey, right next to New York City, so shit like that was a common occurrence for him as a lad. Pretty crazy that both my parents have had experiences with dead humans. Meanwhile, my worst experience was watching a hawk kill and eat a rabbit. My neighbor, a farmer, got his hand caught in a running bale press. Luckily, he was able to jank it out. However, no one was home at the farm, so he came running to our house. I was only 10, and when he came, I was home alone. Luckily, my mom came home from the store a few minutes later. Anyway, that was one mangled hand. So much blood.